Hey everybody, Political Soul Food tonight, Tuesday night, February 26th, a special day in New York City. Yes, indeed. A special election for the public advocate. Yes, indeed. And with that in mind, today's topic is how do we choose political candidates to vote for? How do you choose political candidates to vote for? That's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to share my thoughts on that question. It's a question that is at the heart of our politics in this world. Why? Because even though people want to point out corruption, guess what? We do play a role in who we pick and put out there. So we're going to chime everybody in, kick back, relax, and get ready for today's topic. How do we choose political candidates to vote for? Want to holler at GD Stokes, so Stokes, if you can, pin that up there for me for everybody to catch when we get rolling. Sometimes I have to repeat what the topic is with Instagram because I can't put the title of the show on. But anyway, we're about to get started. Let's make this happen. Another episode in Political Soulful. We're about to get lit. Welcome back. Thanks for being here, y'all, for another episode of Political Soul Food. This is our space, our time and place to promote democracy, to promote citizenship, to promote education, to promote the better angels of our nature as human beings. So each and every time I'm here and I see any of you on any of the platforms, I am revived, I am healed, and I am even more committed to the cause. Topic today is how do we choose political candidates to vote for? Let me just give you a heads up. I initially wanted to talk to people about who they voted for today in New York City for the New York City Public Advocate. That was my initial goal. But it's a little personal for some people to share who they voted for and explain why. I'm sure that many of us, like myself, who don't mind sharing that. There are many reasons, understandable reasons, very legit reasons not to disclose one's political choices. And that's all good. And so I decided to perhaps save such a show for certain people. I would have to prepare and get certain folk who wouldn't mind me calling them if they don't want to actually be in front of the camera. And so I'm going to set something up perhaps for the near future, talking about the current presidential candidates. So that kind of topic is coming up, trust me. But instead of dropping the whole idea of choosing candidates and giving reasons why, I decided to broaden the question. And so I asked people pretty much, let me see what I actually texted a lot of people here. Can you give me three things about a candidate that can win your vote? I want to discuss different reasons people pick candidates on the podcast. So I decided to send this question out to various people. And I'm glad I did because I got a lot of responses. And so these responses will pretty much make up the content of our discussion. It'll be the topic and subjects of our discussion. And there is a point that I want to make, a larger point about politics by discussing different people's criteria for choosing a politician. So let's get into it. Everything is anonymous. So my dear friends, whoever you are, don't worry. I'm not shouting anyone out unless you want me to. So hit me up here. So I'm not giving any background information. I was going to give gender. I'm not going to give gender. I'm not going to give nationality, ethnicity, or religion. I am just giving people's criteria for choosing someone. And then I guess I should share, I think by now some of you might know what my criteria is, but you never know. So I might participate in this, but I definitely will be not necessarily critiquing, but trying to thread some of the suggestions on choosing political candidates, and then also maybe scrutinizing certain criteria that might need to be tightened up or reconsidered. Who knows? Obviously, from my point of view. So let's get into this. All right. So the first one I have here. Someone said background, plan, and experience. Just those three words. Short and sweet, to the point. So, background. Well, it seems like to the point. I would have a question. I would love to have this person on here to explain what they mean by background, because background is broad. Criminal background. Maybe it's just a inclusive category. But some people might say, ethnic background, or racial background, or religious background. So it's it is kind of broad there, and this shows too, right, how intricate things can get when we think about other people's decisions, and how we shouldn't easily make certain conclusions. But I come back to that plan I get, right? So what's the plan? What's the direction you want to take your constituency or the general area that you've been granted a certain amount of authority to lead or to represent in order to negotiate resources for? And experience. And that's real, right? That's real. You want a pilot to know how to fly the plane, and preferably have flown the plane that you're about to get on more than once. So experience matters. However, we saw in the past how people would use experience as a way to discredit someone, even though they might not have the sort of normative kind of experience for a particular position, or an outright different experience. Some people criticize Obama because he was a community organizer, but obviously that falls flat because Obama had other experiences that contributed to his readiness and his capability to be president of the United States. So, president of the United States, there's only one person who's been the president of the United States and then sort of come back after an interrupted term, and that was Grover Cleveland, right? The 22nd president, who also became the 24th president. And so, he can come back and say, well, I got experience for the job. I did this about 4 years ago. So no one really has, direct hands-on experiences for certain positions. It's accumulated experiences and approximations. So, that's an important one, right? And so what we consider experience, some people might not want someone with the same experience. One of the reasons why people pick Donald Trump, some people that I know, they would say, well, he's different from politicians. He's not a politician, so he's going to bring a certain mindset and a certain set of tools to the office that are much needed. Obviously, that can be debated. So let's go on. So background plan experience. Maybe some of you agree. Let's see here. GD Stokes on IG said platform and focus, background and education, and family life. All right, so look at that. We got an intersection here. Background comes up. And GD Stokes, if you don't mind, background in what way? Like, how would you hash that out for me? And do you mean it in every sense or in a very particular sense? Platform, I think platform goes in with plan, so that's definitely interesting. So we got two people already who don't know each other in different states, having a similar kind of standard that a politician should meet, right? And this might be for everybody, who knows? But when I said three, obviously there are many, but by saying three, that forces us to prioritize certain characteristics we would like to see in a person who represents us in politics. Okay, let me go to the second one. Somebody said, I want to vote for someone who I know is real and who isn't just articulate or a soundbite. Okay, now this is interesting. All right. So they were saying that they want a person who is speaking the truth, right, and being who they say they are, so that there are no surprises, no jack in the box, like whoop, 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 do, 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 pop, like where did this come from? And they want someone who is not just talented with words, not just a wordsmith. They want someone who can just speak the matter the way it is, right? And I guess I'm gonna feed into this. Sounds to me just being down to earth and just speaking straight up, as they would say, keeping it real. And for some, that's better than sound bites. It's interesting because I remember someone telling me that they were turned off by a particular candidate's use of sound bites, right? And so that's interesting. I want to come back to that. Let me go to the third one here. I guess the issue that are close to me, and if they give a clear explanation on how they would achieve these plans. All right, so I'm speaking on behalf of someone else. I'll let you know when it's me. So someone said, I guess the issues that are close to me, and if they give a clear explanation on how they would achieve these plans. All right, so somebody's prioritizing issues that are relevant to their lives, it's going to impact their lives. That's really important. I can't wait to get through this list because there are a lot of key points that need to be made about what's been said here, and I should try to keep track myself what I want to remind us of. And someone actually got really specific, and this kind of goes well. I've got to put it in this order. Somebody got very specific about Jermaine Williams. One of my homeboys voted for Jermaine Williams and said Jermaine Williams got my vote because he has been a councilman in my area out in Flatbush for a while now. He's African American. I know him personally. He opposed and fought to get rid of stop and frisk. Because of his popularity, I think he'd be dope, just like Nancy Pelosi, to head our city council. In this comment here, there are some. I can see the criteria that one of my responders gave me, and also what GD Stokes kind of mentioned here. So platform or plan, and experience come in here too. Experience seems to be an important one, and familiarity, obviously. So this person is actually saying, I'm going to give a check mark for this person being African American. I think what's being implied is that being African American helps one to understand, because it kind of there's a increased probability, there's a high probability that one, as an African American, has experienced the shortcomings of policies in New York City, for example, right? And so for that reason, he or she is more likely to see the scenario in the way I do and see the same kind of problems that I want to be addressed. And so that person will be good for representing me. That's what I kind of get out of that. And that's interesting because I was just talking to someone else who felt like a person's background, especially their ethnicity, should not matter at all. Get rid of it, right? But there's something to be said for both sides. I mean, in an ideal world, we would like to say that ethnicity doesn't matter, race doesn't matter. A lot of people who hold this argument also say that the problem is identity politics, and I'll come back on that identity politics in a second. So, let's go to another one. Here's another more general one. Whether the person speaks my language or not, wherever that means to each voter, their history, record politically, what did they show they care about? Their identity, physical attractiveness of the candidate. Wow. Also, what do they believe about the impact of the ecological crisis, the education system, and racial inequality? All right, so this was a lot. Someone is really serious about politics. For some people, this is real, right? It's probably like one of my kind of answers. No, it's not my answer. So let's unpack this a little bit. This is a lot here. So whether a person speaks their language, but language is in quotation, so not literally. Language in terms of, let's say, I would say language in terms of understanding the reality of the situations and speaking to it in a way that demonstrates a similar assessment. Okay, so for example, I'll use myself. If I hear two candidates and one harps on economic inequality, right, and prioritize economic inequality and talking about New Deal stuff, and another is emphasizing racial inequality and white privilege, white rage, systemic racism, they're speaking my language. I mean, for me, my bias, the way I'm wired, my priority is on racism because I see that as the fundamental block in progress, in the progress of of economic inequality. While one can work on both of them in certain ways individually, my reading, as I laid out my card, which is a book, I would say, when affirmative action was white, one of others, it is clear, or another one by an amazing historian, White Rage itself, right? These two books, shows how the economic system was derailed or sabotaged because of racism, and that's my reading. And I'm always willing to debate, and I get into debates a lot against progressives who say that the issue is really just economics, and if you had a proper economic system. All right, I don't want to go too far into that, but you get what I mean. So if somebody speaks my language, and I think that this is what this person is saying by putting quotation marks on "speaks my language," speaking about the issues in a way, using certain language that demonstrates a shared awareness of it, a shared expression of the suffering that results from the scenario, or a shared vision of the society that will be rid of or purge of these problems. All right, so I get that. Historical record politically, that goes back to background for some people, I would say. I think that's interesting here. And their identity. Identity is one of those big words, right? Like background, where it could be racial identity, it could be political identity, it could be religious identity. So I'm not sure what that person meant here in terms of identity. So let's see. There's a lot more here. So this is one that I actually didn't pick. maybe we all would have this, physical attractiveness. And for those of you who just tuned in, I'm talking about, you're probably like, what is he talking about? How do we choose political candidates to vote for? Um, so, so here, out of, from all the other, insightful criteria that are set up here, one says physical attractiveness of the candidate. All right, and I would love to ask this person, to what extent, to what degree, like how does that factor in? What if there's a person who is fluent with the language of politics and the mechanics of politics, but there's another person who is less fluent and less familiar with politics, but to them they're looking amazing, they're looking hot, right? Will they make their choice because the person looks hot? Right? Maybe, I'm sure some will, right? So people choose politicians for so many different reasons, and I guess this is one. If you are one as well who would pick somebody based on their physical attractiveness, let me know. Maybe there are more people. Maybe there are more people than I know about out here who would make that choice. So let me move on to the next one. I got two more. Somebody just chimed in another one, so I got about two or three more. All right, so this person basically was speaking specifically about their decisions to go with someone in today for New York City Public Advocate. And this person said they went with endorsements. And this is interesting. Like, who is endorsing this person, right? And I actually kind of do that too myself. Although I try to be careful for guilty by association or attributing a certain kind of success to someone because they hang out with others. But we have to consider probabilities. I mean, that's how it is. You never ever know a person or know exactly how a person would behave. So we have to look at so many factors. But so this person said that they chose someone because certain other people who they, I guess, either trust or approve of their actions in other scenarios, like a particular person. So if, let's say, you are a Trump supporter and somebody is running, two Republicans are running, but Trump says, hey, this is my boy right here, or this is my girl right here, and you are a staunch Trump supporter, then you're going to pick the person who received Trump's endorsement, right? So that's how it goes. And I do that a lot too. Like, I consider how people speak about, let's say, the Democratic Party or certain policies or certain politicians and their policies, and I listen to the clarity of their commentary or reflections, and I also listen to their criticisms. Right? Someone may criticize someone I like, and I'm like, okay, I get that. Or someone may criticize someone, from an uninformed or misinformed position, and I'm like, nah. Even though we're in the same team, I feel you, but if you're running with these kinds of blurry assessments, at least, all right, I'll be fair in my opinion, then I can't rock with you right now, unless you're the only candidate, and if you end up winning, then fine, I'll work with you. All right, so endorsements are important. Like, does someone that you like support someone else? All right, here's like, we're getting close to the end. Someone said, I pick based on the presence of causes I care for. If they are progressive on issues I care about, and they have leadership presence. Okay, so that's real. So again, I think this is one of those overlapping themes that keeps popping up, right? And that is a candidate speaking on the issues that are relevant to you. And this is real. We wonder why we have a lot of, well, simply put, we wonder why politics is slow. It's because politicians are tending to certain people's needs or putting certain other people's needs first, and that might not be what you need to be put up first. So it gets crazy. And leadership presence. This is interesting too, right? This characteristic comes up a lot, right? Especially in presidential politics. Like, you want somebody who looks like a leader, but like who has leadership presence. Like, what is leadership presence? And I challenge this more and more and more as I challenge, what masculinity is supposed to look like what does it mean to be a man? And so this is something that I would definitely talk about, because I think this actually hurt a lot of female politicians, because the archetypes in our imaginations, even our lived experiences, the archetypes of leadership are predominantly men. And so then the men who are exhibiting, leadership presence are usually demonstrating or performing an inflated sense of masculinity. And if it's not inflated, it's definitely manufactured to appeal to the widest group possible, and to seem beyond human, superhuman. We want people who are like superheroes, almost like gods, amazing, warriors who can do what we cannot do on our own or for ourselves. So that's something to come back to. All right, so that was this list, and so here's. Wait a minute. There's one more. I should say this one last one. This person was nice enough to send me this message. A candidate that makes informed decisions, not decisions that are inflexibility based on the expectations of their political party. So let me read that again. This person chooses a candidate based on that particular candidate making informed decisions and not being inflexible based on expectations of their political party. That's probably the big one for that person. All right, so I like that informed decisions one. Actually, I don't think anybody else mentioned that. Informed decisions, right? That's almost, I mean, obviously there's some biasness in that for anybody, because, who gets to say who's informed, right? That's always a comeback. You have to deal with that. But I like that, because this is, and obviously I'm showing my card again, the one that sort of penetrates our own self-interest, at least just enough to be objective by saying making informed decision. The mere fact one says making an informed decision, it just shows that for at least a short span, that person has put something they might think is very, very personal to them in the back seat, not too far back, maybe in the passenger seat in the front, right? Because usually it's my interest or this particular interest, and that's that. I only care about this one issue, which I'm not saying is wrong, but obviously doing politics, we gotta be, we have to understand the game. All right, so here's my summation of these things here. We got some comments here. Let me just check out some of these comments. G.D. Stokes said, I still cannot understand why people vote for Trump who are not millionaires and billionaires. Yo, you know what? There we go. So this is my segue to my summary of what's going on here before we bounce. So this goes back to a podcast that I did for my All About Barack Obama podcast. And I did one on presidential, candidates. And I discussed, basically it was ultimately like about how Obama received his support and how Trump received his support. And or why. And so, and I had asked, different questions. Was it, the money? Is it demography? Is it this? Is it that? And the third? And there's a lot of different issues, or factors. But the big one was, it seems, symbolic representation. And this kind of goes back to J.D. Stokes. Trump represented something symbolically. He was the symbolic representation of whiteness, which is under attack for them. All right. Now, so going back to this list and incorporating what I just said, one thing here we have to notice: people have different criteria. People have different criteria. We may have shared criteria in a general sense, but then there may be very specific issues that people want to see put forth and articulate. And I think that's something that Democrats need to learn how to be a little bit more savvy about. Understanding that we put politicians in a bind. This list is, I just basically took a poll. Politicians take tons and tons of polls, and they're getting way more different criteria than the ones you see here. Obviously, they get to see the common ones, and what politicians tend to do based on the target group that they understand are more likely to win votes from. They look at those commonalities, and so politicians end up becoming, sounding like sound bites to a certain degree, because we do force them to say things that we want them to hear. We do force them to put forth a certain background. We do force them to look a certain way when we say we want experience. Some say we want experience, and many others are saying, well, we want something novel. We want somebody to shake up the ground, and so we're requesting that. And so much of what we see is what we've requested. And so that's one thing. So that's politics. So when people say politics is this, politics is that, I never trust a politician, we have to remember that there are a lot of people participating in this. We're all pulling on the politicians. And then you have certain politicians who are already starting off behind, right? Based on ethnicity or or career or opportunities missed or withdrawn. So it's very layered, it's very complex, and we got to know that as voters, because that can improve our endurance, increase our endurance. So people have different criteria, and when they are shared, people may have very different particular issues that they want to hear about, right? And that's really, really, really important. I wanted to bring that up. And there's another one I needed to bring out. When somebody says, I guess the issues that are close to me, and if they give a clear explanation on how they would achieve these plans. Now, imagine a politician says, okay, imagine a politician goes beyond saying, they actually bring up the issues that are close to individuals, and they give very clear explanations, clear in the way that people need to hear them. But what if they're not informed? It gets real. It gets real. If they're not informed, if they can say everything we want to hear, but they're not informed, maybe, I have to confess that, there's something that we're not going to be able to get over, no matter how much, information we have, how much we know about politics. Words are powerful. Words are so powerful. And I go beyond politics. I go observing my own life, other people's lives, especially being nosy and watching like relationships. And we see how people respond to certain words or how people talk. So that's a big thing, right? And that shows up here when someone says speak my language, or what was another one? Speak my language, or bring out the issues that relates to me, or be clear. All of these things shows that rhetoric plays a huge role. And so let me pick out another one that I saw that was something that came out here. So all right. So to sum this up for the night, politics is life, yo. All right. This is why I always push and promote liberal education. We have to learn something about psychology, how human beings are, how we behave, how we are affected by certain things in our environment. What influences us? Now, Plato was onto this very early in the game, over 2,000 years ago, and I think he went overboard. But Plato was like, "Yo, we need to get poetry out of our society, because poetry and devices like music, rhetoric, basically, like verbal, these verbal devices could sway people in the face of facts that are contrary to what is being said. That's crazy. But we need to understand that that's how many of us function, to varying degrees. And we also have to acknowledge that, we put politicians in these positions to perform the way they do. There's a performance of politics. And things are changing. But let's say even those who say we don't want no establishment politicians, you're just grooming another flow. And some people sacrifice, a certain standard because they don't want a certain look anymore, not realizing that they are also promoting empty content when it's just based on a person who's just saying what they want to hear. All right, so listen, I gotta bounce. I hope that some of this got you thinking and reflecting on politics and on the innate challenges to politics. Check me out on Patreon if you like any of this stuff. Please support patreon.com/Kasan Henry as it's spelled on the platform. I'm here Monday through Thursdays for sure. I try to drop in on the weekends if I can. I gotta bounce. When I see you here, it just strengthens me to keep on going. Keep doing your thing, everybody. We need your voices. I need your voice. I see y'all out there on social media pushing out positivity. Keep holding it down. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace. All right, Facebook, chiming out.